Fog Entertainment back again with another TV show review, and it's this time for episode 11 of season 1 of The Sopranos. And it's actually got a pretty fitting title. It is Nobody Knows Anything, because it's kind of true to the what actually happens in the episode. Like, some people know stuff, but the one guy that knows stuff kind of goes missing. But let's dive into the third last episode of season 1, and in my opinion, it's probably the best episode of the season. And probably one of the better episodes of the show. The Sopranos is good. I do enjoy it. I just feel like there's massive flaws with it. And, I reviewed it all over on Jesus TV, but then that channel got took down. So here we are over on Fog Entertainment doing co-op reviews. But the other guy is a waster. Kind of like a few people in this show. Fat, out of shape, wasters. But anyway, I digress. And we kick off. In this episode, we basically have Big Pussy and Jimmy Alterari being arrested at this pool hall. It's funny because Pussy tries to run, he tries to escape, but he ends up getting caught so easily. And like, you can play this up when he's out of shape or his back, fat, whatever. It was disgraceful. Jimmy Alterari gets arrested. The pool table had a bunch of guns. There was like 30 grand as well. I don't think there was any drugs or anything there, but not looking good. Pussy is later released. Jimmy Alterari is not quite released yet. But of course, Pussy's saying that his back has got worse due to the chase and the arrest. And we've basically got Junior saying it's embarrassing, we don't run, which I thought was a pretty funny line from Junior. But everyone's joking about it, even though he's got it relatively easy, and like Tony kind of alludes to that. He's like, only you, Puss, would be able to get out after that amount of stuff. It's surprising that no one thinks that he's ratted, if I'm being honest. It does kind of surprise me at this point. That doesn't really happen until a wee bit later on, where Finn, the police detective who provides Tony with information, he meets him and basically just comes out of nowhere and says, "There's Tony, you've got an informant in your crew, and it's Big Pussy." And he's heard this from the FBI task force. And holy moly, Tony does not take well to this, which rightfully so, because Pussy's one of his best friends, so of course Tony's not gonna. And he's like, "If you're fucking joking about this," but again, like, they kind of question the fact later on in the episode if Finn was lying about this or whatever. But again, I don't think he was, because there is a raid later on in the episode at the brothel. He ends up getting arrested, and then he's driving. He shows his badge to like the police officer at this bridge. It's like full with traffic. Then he just parks up and jumps off. So obviously, at this point, he can't tell them information, because Tony does find information from the hostess at the brothel about that Finn in fact owed Big Pussy 30 grand. So again, that could have been his leverage in order to get Pussy out the picture and get his debt wiped free. Tony does question this theory though with Silvio and Polly, because he's like, would he really have the balls to do that? But then again, if he's suicidal and he jumps off this bridge and kills himself, therefore would he in turn have the balls? Because if he's suicidal, maybe doesn't really have the same will to live as other people, maybe he would rap. But most notably here, Raymond Corto actually gets arrested at the brothel with him, which of course we find out in like season 6 that Raymond, or Ray, whatever you want to call him, is in fact the rat. And is it at this point that Raymond is flipped? I can't actually remember later on the show if it is explained about when he turns a rat, but we know it's been for some time, and I wouldn't actually be surprised at this point if it is. But it's actually mad. By the end of the show, there's not many people who haven't been flipped, or at least got to at the end, which is kind of sad at the end of the day, but it is what it is. Tony is talking to the madam again, basically, because that's how he found out about the hang, and it turns out that she was kind of like acting like a therapist to him, but he sleeps with her, and Tony's like, I can relate with that, because of course he wanted to sleep with Dr. Melvi. But it's weird, because she explains to him that Finn actually looked up to Tony as a friend, even though Tony treated him with disdain, which is kind of hanging. Tony, I wouldn't say he feels any remorse here, because let's be real, Tony's kind of a sociopath at the same time. But I think he sees where Finn's coming from. He kind of sees that Finn is kind of like him, but he works for the police. So, but Tony then visits Pussy at his house. He's basically sitting at home with his back up. His son's there. Tony makes fun of him, saying that his son can't be his because he's a good looking kid, man. It can't be yours. Just, the typical banter here that's nothing exactly mental. But Tony, he's trying to like question Pussy here without obviously like letting it slip that he thinks he's a rat. But of course, that's kind of what's going on. Tony then calls Polly. They're having like a sit down at Bada Bing. Tony lets him know that Pussy may be a rat and he wants Polly to find out if he's a rat, and if he is a rat, he can only act if he actually finds a wire on him, which I think's the right call. If it was a guy who you like, who was just in the crew, not one of your best mates, maybe you could act like without actually seeing the wire. But Polly then takes him to get a fits done, or whatever you call it, it's the steam thing, and he just even this is weird in my opinion. Like Pussy gets so defensive. He gets so defensive, right? And it's like, right, he would obviously know where Polly's taking him, but it's like he lets it get to the point where it's take your clothes off or nothing. Like surely he would be like beforehand, no, Polly, I'm not doing this. Then he kind of does flip it and says he can't go near steam and that the heat would be bad for his blood pressure and his heart. His doctor told him this. Which then Polly then proceeds to back off, but Polly didn't exactly. But how far could Polly go here without making it obvious to Pussy that he was suspected of him? Because at the same time, like we see in like season 3, of course, we do find out that Pussy was in fact a rat, but it's like points where he was pretending to be Santa, and he like Tony's like, fuck, he was wearing the wire then. But that's the thing I don't get. Was he? See, at this point, is this the exact point that Pussy came a rat? I think it actually changes throughout the show, where they actually pinpoint the point where Pussy became a rat. Because of course he could still get arrested at this point and been a rat prior, and then that's why they just release him rather than they make a deal with him. But again, it is kind of hard to see what would really, where is the point where Pussy turned rat. It's not like other shows where they make it obvious. And again, that's another problem I've got with the show. They fuck up the timeline in this, and stuff like that does bother me. Like you've got a timeline of like the Tony Soprano's dad, Johnny Boy. On his grave it'll say one date, and I think in like season 6 it says a different date. Like stuff like that, I like continuity. And people in this talk about this show like, oh, when you see how he does like a heavy breathing there, it alludes to something 3 seasons ago, and they try and like say, oh, David Chase was so smart with that. Well, where's his continuity? Because some cases it sucks. Tony then visits his shrink, basically says about Pussy's physical problems, and says, could that be to do with stress? And she says, well, his back could be to do with stress and carrying a burden, which of course Tony thinks about. Fuck, that could be the fact that he is a rat. Tony then returns home, still thinking that Pussy could be the rat, which in my opinion at this point, I wouldn't say Pussy's off the hook, because the whole thing with Polly was weird. Being honest, Jimmy though, Uncle Jimmy shows up, Jimmy Alterati, and Tony within 3 seconds of talking to him in the basement quickly gets Tony to think that Jimmy Alterati is in fact the informant, which he's absolutely bang on, because he is, and he's just asking him a lot of questions, and I don't understand. Like, I mean, this is real life. This is actually what happens. Like, they wear a wire. They basically get the person they're asking to incriminate themselves, but the questions have to be so obvious. Why do they have to be so obvious? Like, why can't they just get them to talk about it fluently? Rather than like where like they're actually like interrogating them. It's so obvious, man. And Tony clicks within 5 seconds. Like, so Tom, what you doing with the Colombian money or whatever money it was, the Polark money? He's like, what you doing with it, man? I had the feds telling me that stuff was marked. What about those 2 dead bodies you killed? And then Tony's obviously answering it with, Jimmy, you're a lucky guy. Never, acknowledging the question or admitting anything, which then prompts Tony to go to the meat factory Solaris, and he basically goes ballistic. He tells Silvio that it's not Pussy and it's Jimmy. And then when Polly walks in, Tony gets really angry. And this is really good acting here by James Gandolfini. He fucking gets Polly up against the wall. Say you do not fucking hurt him. Say you do not kill him. Say you do not fucking lay a finger on him. Polly's like, no, I didn't. And then essentially, Pussy though has disappeared. According to the Wikipedia, I don't know if Polly actually said that. I don't think Polly did say that, but is this the time when actually he might have disappeared? I think this might be actually the point where Pussy goes to, did he go to Boca? So yeah, again, like that just makes it so obvious. Like, and that's another thing, right? Just because Jimmy's a rat doesn't automatically mean Pussy's not a rat. Because like I just discussed in like the previous like 2 minutes ago, I don't know what point Pussy becomes a rat, but he does. And just because one guy's a rat does not mean the other guy's not a rat. They can clearly get the twoies. But again, I think is it part of Tony not willing to accept that's a possibility because he's one of his best friends, probably. But then we get one of the worst scenes. I just fucking hate Livia, man. Junior shows up to visit Livia, and she's like, "Oh, Tony's making moves, Junior. He's getting all his captains to move their mothers here so they can have meetings here." And why does Junior come to the conclusion here that they're building a plot against him? Like, that's what I don't get. Like, yeah, like, they're... Why? Because they're meeting in a nursing home, does that mean they're fucking building a plot against Junior? Why? Why does that mean that? I mean, they could literally talk about it fucking anywhere if they truly wanted to. Junior, you fucking windy liquor. Like, when he was talking to... When he talks with Mikey and fucking whoever, Chucky, about, we're going to do this thing, we're going to wipe out Tony because he's seen a shrink. It's not like they did at a nursing home. Again, Livia turning the screw here, and she knows exactly what she's doing. People can say that, oh, this is great acting, and and like, oh, you have to hate her, but there's just some about her. It almost makes you turn it off. Honestly, it's so fucking bad. Junior though, pissed about this, and Livia basically gives her blessing here to kill Tony, and this is, oh, but I'm a fragile old woman. Oh, but the mafia, they look up to their mothers. Fuck Livia. I cannot stand the bastard. I really can't. And now, yeah, we see Mikey return home saying he's going to get moved up a few pegs because guess what? He tells his wife, we're wiping out Tony Soprano. So yeah, guys, how is that going to play out in the next 2 episodes? Looking forward to it. So it looks like they've discovered that Jimmy Altieri is the rat and all that good stuff. But yeah, I'm going to make a fit about why didn't Tony suspect Pussy and Jimmy. But anyway, leave your thoughts down below. And until next time, I'm going to give this episode an 8 out of 10. Peace.